Right, so there was definitely a sense of the International Court of Justice being on trial since South Africa brought its genocide case against Israel, because if it should not have found, at least in part, against Israel after their embarrassingly poor defence at The Hague versus a cut and polished South African prosecution, then international law would have been pronounced a sham. It would have been over. In that, I suppose the court has absolved itself in what it has decided to do today. The interim orders it has handed down to Israel, as well as what it is going to do going forwards, they're definitely a spanking for Israel. And of course the orders handed down are very much legally binding as well. But do they go far enough? And will it ultimately make any difference to what Israel are doing now, and how this genocide, as we can very much all call it now, may be shaped by it going forwards? Right, so has Israel been ordered to cease fire immediately and get out of Gaza then? No. That said, though, South Africa is still delighted by the result they've got, because the International Court of Justice has ruled that there is a prima facie case that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Prima facie simply meaning at first sight. So this interim judgment is based on first impressions, therefore based entirely, as you would imagine it would be at this stage of the game, on the case South Africa presented to the court. The ICJ President, Judge Joan Donohoe, spoke for some 40 minutes in giving the court's ruling, and it was 40 minutes of her essentially spanking Israel from one end of the courtroom to the other, though obviously done in legalese. In order to ascertain whether any preliminary measures could be taken and provisional orders made against Israel, it was crucial that South Africa proved prima facie, and this is simply made on the basis of the merits of the case as presented by the South African prosecution. It is too early to decide if actual violations of the Genocide Convention have been committed by Israel, no matter how blatant much of what we've read or seen in clips of on social media might say, might indicate to ourselves, might form our own opinions. The main case will take considerably longer to reach a conclusion over, possibly years even, such as the importance placed on meeting this requirement so that the ICJ has, within its jurisdiction, the ability to place any interim orders it might decide to, and these would then have the necessary legal weight. So prima facie is incredibly important. It means that these orders they put down will be legally binding. And these came at the end and were read out by the President of the Court, Joan Donohoe, thusly. The Court indicates the following provisional measures. 1. By 15 votes to 2, the State of Israel shall, in accordance with its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, in relation to Palestinians in Gaza, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of this Convention. In particular, A. Killing members of the group. By group they're obviously referring to the Gazans. B. Causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. And D. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. 2. By 15 votes to 2, the State of Israel shall ensure with immediate effect that its military does not commit any acts described in point 1 above. 3. By 16 votes to 1, the State of Israel shall take all measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. 4. By 16 votes to 1, the State of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. 5. By 15 votes to 2, the State of Israel shall take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of acts within the scope of Article 2 and Article 3 of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crimes of Genocide against members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. And 6. By 15 votes to 2, the State of Israel shall submit a report to the court on all measures taken to give effect to this order within 1 month as from the date of this order. Now, it has to be said that people who were postulating how the judges would vote, especially given Judge Donohoe is herself American, another judge, Judge Nolte, is German, both nations are backing Israel strongly right now. So the 8 votes required by members of the ICJ, 9 if you include the representative judges from both Israel and South Africa, was seen as far from certain. The fact that out of the 17 judges, all of the interim orders were voted on by at least 15 or 16 votes really does go to show how big a thrashing Israel got at this point. Far bigger than anyone was predicting. Or to look at it another way, how strong the South African case actually was. In case you're assuming the judge who voted against each order was the Israeli one, you'd also be wrong. The Israeli judge actually voted against his own country twice, against his own government, the government of Netanyahu, on orders 3 and 4. The judge who voted against every single order was Judge Julius Sebatinde from Uganda. What the hell, Uganda? What's this about? Ugh, questions for another day, that one. However, there was no call for a ceasefire as South Africa had wanted, and no call for Israel to withdraw from Gaza, so the war, for lack of another suitable word at this point, can go on, as long as it isn't in violation of these orders. This won't go far enough for many. They want this to end, we all want it to end, we all hoped there would be a ceasefire. There's little reason to believe Israel would do anything any different. Netanyahu has already stated in past few days he'd ignore any orders. But does that mean the rest of the world will? These interim orders are legally binding after all. The ICJ might not have any army at its disposal to enforce the ruling it has laid down, but it is a branch of the United Nations, along with the UN General Assembly, the UN Security Council, and every nation signed up to the Genocide Convention that this prosecution was brought under. Turning a blind eye just isn't acceptable, not now a legal ruling on Israel's conduct in Gaza has been put in place. This is a win, even if it isn't the big win that we all wanted to see. These are the first steps in accountability we've seen slapped on Israel ever in the 75 years of its existence, the 56 years of its occupation of Palestine. That matters. That counts for something. The ICJ has ordered Israel to take measures to prevent genocide in Gaza and report back to the court in 1 month detailing how they've done that. If they don't bother, as Netanyahu's rhetoric would appear to imply, or if they aren't seen to have done enough, then that ceasefire is, well, it's still in the ICJ's back pocket. Even as the judgment was being read out, bombing was going on in Gaza. So really, I suppose that begs the question, what has changed, or what will actually change? Well, for one, by acknowledging prima facie, the crime of genocide has been established on first glance. Therefore, the ICJ will take the case forward. This isn't the end of it, it's just the beginning. There is now a sense of Israel being held to account. A ruling on genocide has just gone against them. More could follow. Therefore, all the excuses Israel always make, and will in some quarters no doubt still make, will no longer wash. They'll be even weaker an argument than ever. A precedent has now been set, met, and ruled on. If the anti-Semitism card gets played again, for instance, there's now a legal ruling people can use to push back and refute that. South Africa are delighted, as I've said. In attendance at The Hague was South Africa's Foreign Minister, Naledi Pandora, who spoke of how welcoming the issuing of the emergency orders has been in her country, and that in her view, the orders handed down by the court would have to amount to a ceasefire, since there is no way that Israel can carry on indiscriminately bombing the Gaza Strip as they have been doing for months. And with prima facie satisfied for Israel to not change tactics, not stop its carpet bombing, its destruction of infrastructure, it would be in violation of the court. Attacks on Gaza, as have been seen, cannot continue, so would have to be a ceasefire from civilian perspective, surely. However, this does assume goodwill and willingness on the part of Israel, however, which few, I think, would grant them. But the order handed down to Israel here also affects every other country that has sided with them and aids them in any way. If Israel carry on as they have been, don't change their ways at all, and the US and UK, for example, keep supplying arms to them, well, they're going to end up being in trouble themselves. Individuals, whoever they are, wherever they're from, involved in continuing this genocide in any way, now that this order has been laid down, can find themselves faced with an arrest warrant now. This is particularly problematic for the US. They, as we know, just like here in the UK, have refused to call for a ceasefire, but have been calling for mass bombardment to end. Now, the ICJ has made that a legal ruling, enforcing exactly what the US says it wants. Therefore, should matters pertaining to the enforcement of this order come before the UN Security Council, for whom it would be down to enforcement, the US using their veto in any way contrary to the ICJ ruling, well, that would not only be illegal now, but would also be complete hypocrisy, and Biden would deserve the arrest warrant that would be delivered to the door of the White House, wouldn't he? This also puts just as much pressure on our government, who keep going along with whatever the US do, as well as the Labour Party of Keir Starmer, who are also in complete lockstep on this. Israel now have a month to stop killing civilians deliberately, to restore infrastructure and allow in aid, and prove they're doing this. Otherwise, more orders may follow. The fear is Israel don't stop and the killing goes on for another 4 weeks, as it has done all along, for months now. But now each and every incident of needless civilian death, of destruction of aid or services that we see on social media, that gets reported in Middle Eastern media, for example, Al Jazeera, as a for instance, is a violation of this court ruling, is illegal in the World Court. We are all our own media these days, aren't we? We've all got smartphones, we've all got access to the internet, especially these people in Palestine and Gaza. These matters can and will be collected and collated, and if Israel don't stop, well, it's now been proven that they can and will be taken to task for what they do. Ball's in their court. If I were them, I'd just quit whilst I was behind. I wonder how the Houthis in Yemen will take this news. Is it enough for them to stop blockading ships, or will they wait a little bit longer to see if Israel do actually do as they're told? Either way, their actions have just made history, and this video here will show you exactly how, if you care to watch it next, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.